It's Friday, August 22nd, 2014.
I'm Sydney Foster.
And I'm Trey Comstock. Put in your final orders because this is Tech's Last Call, episode 85. Your last call for Tech News of the Week. Tonight, Jimmy buys devices that help Microsoft. Sydney waves goodbye to our favorite Microsofter. And I show that in Minecraft, we may someday no longer have a need for Microsoft. But we start tonight with everyone's favorite dancing basketball owner.
So, Microsoft's board of directors got a little quieter on Tuesday as former CEO Steve Ballmer handed in his letter of resignation. Sad day.
For you, Steve.
In his letter to current Microsoft CEO Satya Nadella, Steve Ballmer states that while he still bleeds Microsoft, his words, he feels called to devote his time to other endeavors, including in large part his latest toy, the LA Clippers.
You should see, he does this great, where he comes out on stage at a Clippers fan event, and he goes fucking bananas.
He really is like a little kid who just got the best birthday present ever.
You've never seen that man
it's
so
pretty
happy.
much like this is what he's wanted to do with his entire life, and finally he's in a place
I finally have enough money
where people enjoy him yelling, basically. So in his letter of resignation to Nadella, he basically says, I have great confidence in Microsoft, so I don't feel like I need to manage things, and I just, I have other things I want to do with my time. He, of course, includes some classic Microsoft taglines, including, quote, devices and services, and, of course...
He had to get that in there.
The latest one, yeah, but he does chant mobile first, cloud first at least twice.
The productivity company for the mobile first, cloud first world.
Yes, indeed. And he also happens to not so casually drop into his letter, as in blatantly, openly, multiple times mention that he is, in fact, still Microsoft's largest shareholder. So while he's removing himself from the board of directors...
Largest individual shareholder.
Correct,
There's an institutional shareholder that has more than him.
Yes, thanks for the clarification. So he's sort of, basically, it's Big Ballmer is watching you. I'm still here, I still have some control. And so in a shorter and somewhat more reserved response, Satya Nadella thanked Ballmer for his years of service and stated that he looks forward to continuing to work with Ballmer as a shareholder. So let's all take a moment of Ballmer.
A moment of Ballmer? I don't think I can do this one.
Gotta try.
He's so he's really happy now.
He's so happy.
It's like a moment of silence, only way more energetic. Sorry, audio listeners, you really missed out. So now that we've had our moment of Ballmer, let's all take a contemplative moment and ask ourselves, are we surprised by this move from Steve? And what, if anything, does this mean for Microsoft moving forward?
So here's the thing. The conspiracy theorists kind of are having a field day with this because this is essentially a year, almost to the date, since he announced that he was stepping down as CEO. Mm-hmm. And the search began. And basically, one of the ways this is being read by folks like, not crazy people, like folks like Leo Laporte, read this as basically Ballmer got fired in slow motion. That this was the plan all along. That he was going to step down as CEO, he was going to transition the board, and then he was going to transition out in his own way, right? So at no point did he look like he was being fired. He looked like the prime mover in each of these, when in reality
he was choosing to.
When in reality he was basically just given a gentlemanly way out. And if you look at the facts, that is certainly one way to read them. Of course, you can read the official narrative as presented, that he wanted to move on, and then he bought a basketball team, and now he's not going to have time. But that seems a little ridiculous,
I don't buy
right?
that, though, because there are CEOs of other companies sit on companies' boards.
Bill Gates is running one of the world's largest charitable organizations, and he's still on the Microsoft board, and he ain't going nowhere. So... this is... I looking at the facts as presented, I can buy that argument. That basically, this is the end of Steve getting fired that began 12 months ago.
All right.
Because
they just need some young blood not young, but like new blood in there, and they needed some fresh ideas, and that having Ballmer around, I guess they were worried that it could overshadow what Satya is trying to do.
Or they're just trying, or not even that, or they're just trying to punish Ballmer for screwing up.
Or that.
I mean, I'm not, when they made this decision, I don't think Satya was picked yet, right? So theoretically, this has been happening over a year.
Fresh blood in any sense, in that they were going to go with someone new anyways.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And so this could have just been the plan all along of like, when Ballmer steps down, we can't have both Ballmer and Yates.
We can't have all of the CEOs of Microsoft currently on its board.
Then it starts to look like the scene at the end of Return of the Jedi, where you've got all the dead Jedi masters floating around, looking approving.
We are watching you.
Right. Well, I mean, there only have been in the entire history of Microsoft. There have been 3 CEOs: Gates, Ballmer, Nadella, and that's it. And they all, up until today, or up until this week, rather, they were all on the Microsoft board in some shape or form.
Right. And so it's probably for the best that... I mean, I think it's for the best for Ballmer. I think it may or may not be for the best for Microsoft, but I think it really does give... I think it really does give Nadella the chance to not have to worry, like, tiptoe around Ballmer.
Yeah, but Ballmer's the advocate for the things I like.
Well, yeah.
I mean, literally, Ballmer is the advocate for the side of Microsoft that I actually enjoy. Well, part of it. I mean,
Nadella is be big on Azure.
Nadella's been big on the cloud services, and you're not going to hear me deny that cloud services are the future. But Ballmer is is the home of heart and soul of Microsoft's hardware play. He's the one who doubles down and invests heavily in Xbox and Zune and Surface. Right? Like this, and the Nokia acquisition. This is all Ballmer, as far as we understand. None of this is official. But from what we understand, reading the tea leaves, that is Ballmer. And to me, that is one of the most interesting plays that Microsoft is making in its modern iteration that it never would have made 15 years ago.
Well, part of that was because the anti-competitive nonsense that was going on 15, 20 years ago.
Also because the OEMs weren't crap.
True.
I mean, look... Part of what Ballmer saw, and part of what is wrong with Microsoft, isn't Microsoft. Windows 8 isn't perfect, but it certainly is usable on some level. It's as sensical as iOS. And certainly, if you had an actual reliable base of OEMs that weren't just Lenovo, if Lenovo was not your...
Lenovo's the only one. They're the only ones worth a damn.
And they bought the only other OEM that was worth a damn, and that was Nokia. Right? And now, I mean, we're going to talk about an HTC story here in a minute, but in terms of reliable OEMs, there were 2, then they bought 1, and now there are 1. I mean, what is HP, Dell, Asus, any of them?
Okay,
Acer,
so some of Dell's stuff is not
and some of Asus and some of Acer's aren't all that bad. But you're talking about able to compete with Apple on anything that isn't price? You look at the high end of the laptop market. Who owns it? Apple, hands down. Which means, fundamentally, Apple's the Halo brand. And if you're not buying Apple, it's not because, generally speaking, it's not because you don't want an Apple product. It's because you can't afford an Apple product. Which is not a place you want to be as a brand. You want to, if you're Windows, you want to span all of that. Which is why the Surface Pro 3 is what it is. It is a premium device and at a premium price tag. It's equivalent, only slightly cheaper than the equivalent MacBook Airs. And if you add in a keyboard, it's no cheaper than the equivalent MacBook Airs. Which is where it should be. Because it's actually playing in that competitive space, using real materials and real processors and real solid-state drives and all kinds of things.
Well, I would say that I'm going to say that the Microsoft hardware is the most interesting that's being put out, other than Lenovo. Dell and HP and Asus and Acer and all of them are basically just coming back with the same ideas that either Apple came up with. Look at how many MacBook clones you have.
Right.
And then, or the ideas that Lenovo have come up with.
Or really bad ideas from 15 years ago.
Well, that's true. But Lenovo, for example, the Yoga, the Yoga was very successful. And so by the time the Yoga 2 came out, everybody was doing a total rotational hinge kind of thing. Dell had one. I think HP has one. Acer has that
one that was
one
built into the screen frame. It was crazy.
right. So I don't know. I think that the hardware, but like Zune failed, and
Yeah, but Zune failed because of timing, not because of quality. Very few of
best
these
product
things,
2006
which just happened to come out in 2009.
2009.
Like all of these, and they bought Nokia. They either bought Nokia too late, or shouldn't have bought Nokia. They should have bought Nokia before they released Windows Phone 7 phones. And
right,
so that
when
way
they were first partnering with them.
right, so they wouldn't have had this long latency period. So like, I wonder if they just look at the hardware totally firing Ballmer. They look at the hardware play and go, and already in Satya's manifesto, they were clearly distancing themselves from the hardware play.
Well, that's interesting considering that they just bought Nokia. Like, what are they going to do?
They fired all of them. I mean, you saw what they did. They fired half of it so far.
It's true.
I mean, they literally got rid of half of Nokia in a day.
Google did that with Motorola.
Right, and then they got rid of Motorola. And what did Google do with Motorola? Not a whole lot. They patents, right? Like $16 billion for patent. To be fair, anyways, WeChat, yeah,
We.
the $16 billion figure, like Motorola and a dumb chat client are worth about the same. Like, let's think about that for a second. Like, that's awful to think about. Something less awful to think about is HTC and Windows Phone.
Yeah, this week we got our newest high-end entry into the Windows Phone space. The HTC announced the HTC One M8 for Windows, which is their first new Windows Phone since the HTC 8X, which was released about 2 years ago.
2 years ago, yeah.
Now, what's actually new here? Not much. It's the same 5-inch screen, 1080p, full HD, same ultra-pixel duo camera stupid thing that they had, and the same boom sound speakers that you can get on the Android version, 2.3 gigahertz quad-core processor, same RAM, 32 gig internal storage with an SD card slot up to 128 gig, all of the things. However, you can get the slick Windows Phone now. It has a nice little Windows Phone logo on the back with Windows Phone 8.1.1,
Yep.
which has the Cortana.
Which has Cortana, and, yeah, all of that.
All of that stuff. And
it's what I have on my Lumia.
It actually, I'd say, not it will be. It was released at noon the day of announcement on Verizon.
So like the Sega Saturn.
Yeah. Was released exclusively on Verizon for $99. Which is $100 less than the HTC One M8 was 6 months ago. So, Trey, do you think that this is the best that Windows Phone can hope for, or is this an indication that it's really, is it really being considered a real player, or is this like oh yeah, I guess we can do that too?
Windows Phone just got one of the best phones in the market.
Okay.
Windows Phone just got one of the best phones out there.
One of the
they
best
got a hero
phones.
phone, not by Nokia. Spec for spec, the same as the Android version, something that goes toe to toe with the Galaxy S5 and the iPhone. And they just got it. That's exclusive with Verizon, and there's some caveats there.
Now, there's a definite indication that exclusivity is a for now.
But this is one of the reasons why Microsoft has bent over backwards to change the spec of Windows Phone so that Android phone manufacturers can just load in a new operating system and there it goes.
Well, it's also Windows Phone is free now, correct?
Yes, sort of.
With certain caveats.
Yeah, it's free with caveats, but yes, it's free. So it's
now
free.
It's free, so there's no reason not to do it.
It no longer requires a hardware camera button, which was the other big holdup, and it works on a wider variety of screen with 8.1. Works on a wider variety of screen sizes and resolutions.
It can still support the phablets.
Right, and so basically they bent over backwards so that exactly this kind of thing could happen. And guess what? It happened. This is dirt cheap for HTC to do, especially if they don't put a whole lot of marketing behind it, because Microsoft is. Microsoft isn't this isn't exactly like they're getting some second-rate phone. Like, this is even better than what happened with the HTC 8X.
Oh, that's true. So the 8X was a really good phone.
It was a
I
great
really
phone,
did
yeah. It was
like
absolutely
It was
great.
great form factor. But the other thing that was weird about this announcement. So this announcement was on Tuesday. I guess Tuesday morning in Japan, HTC announced the Butterfly 2, which is actually just the upgraded version of the HTC One M8 that's for the Asian market. But that was just in a press release. They didn't do any kind of announcement. But then they had this announcement the same day, 12 hours later. And it was kind of a really weird, like, okay, you just released this other phone. You couldn't have waited till after you did the
Well,
press release for Microsoft.
I think this is one of those things that proves that HTC's core market is not the United States. I mean,
Yeah,
that's
I think
been
you're right.
pretty clear. They are doing really great high-end hardware, but
yeah.
if we saw a breakdown of their sales, I bet the majority is not in the U.S.
True.
Whereas Apple, the majority of its sales is U.S. and
Well,
Samsung's majority of its sales is everywhere in the world.
Well, I think I saw an interesting statistic that was like Lenovo just passed Samsung
I could believe that. But
in
it's
one of
because-
the phone markets. And I don't think it was overall, but I think it was one of the phone markets.
Well, what's the number?
Lenovo.
And guess who's number one in China now? Xiaomi.
Yeah, I knew that.
Everyone's favorite Apple ripoff. Who they released an Apple ripoff product this week, but I mean they are absolutely the Apple clone of the Android world. Even worse than Samsung. Although Samsung's new metal phone, this industrial design, looks almost exactly like an iPhone 5S, like almost exactly like an iPhone 5S.
Yeah.
So, in terms of Samsung products by any other name, what happened with Samsung?
Yeah, it's Samsung, man. So on Wednesday of this week, so we had a Tuesday announcement from HTC. On Wednesday, we had a Samsung and Barnes and Noble announcement where they made good on their partnership that they announced back in June, introducing a new Nook tablet, which I think I was very excited about until I saw what it was. So it's the Samsung Galaxy Tab 4 Nook, and it's very aptly named because it is just a Samsung Galaxy Tab 4, which is the 7-inch tablet from Samsung. It sells for $200. It's got 2 cameras, and I don't care. Specs. It has specs that are irrelevant.
It's a
because
tablet.
It's a $200 7-inch tablet. That's all you really need to know. There's nothing special about this device. The only thing it has is a custom Nook skinned interface that makes it look a lot like the previous Nook HD and HD Plus interfaces,
Which were just Android tablets.
They were Android on the back end with this Nook skinning, but it also has Galaxy apps in it. It's a weird
And the App
identity
Store.
crisis.
It has the App Store.
It has a Google Play App Store. Well, the HD and HD Plus both have the App Store as
Oh,
well.
wow. Okay, I didn't know that part.
So that was rolled out about 6 months to a year
Okay,
ago.
sure. Okay. Yeah. Now,
Basically, around the time where I started considering getting another one of those things was when they released the App Store for
Sure.
it.
Yeah. Interesting.
And so, really, the really crazy thing is there's not even a Barnes & Noble or Nook logo on the outside of it. It looks just like, if I walked up to someone with this thing in their hand, you would have no idea that it was not just a Samsung Tab 4. Like, you'd have no clue, which is really unfortunate. Now, the Samsung Galaxy Tab 4 Nook will cost $179.99, which is $20 less than the Samsung Galaxy Tab 4, but there's just too many words there. Samsung Galaxy Tab 4, but basically the street price for that right now is the same price. So that's a good thing for Barnes & Noble, I guess. And it was available immediately following the announcement. Same kind of deal, which was very interesting that both of those had immediate availability. In addition, Barnes & Noble demonstrated an updated version of their built-in store for their books and magazines and things that is on the newest Nook, but will be released to the HD and HD Plus. They didn't really give a timeline for that. But Sydney, do you think that this is in this attempt to kind of cut costs by not making their own hardware, Barnes & Noble has kind of killed anything special that they might have had left in the Nook?
It seems like the name was kind of pasted on this thing, but other than the name,
Except not actually pasted.
right, but not literally physically pasted, so it doesn't even give them that, like, basically, I mean, I could call my Surface RT the Surface RT Nook because it has, I guess it has, I could call it the Surface RT Kindle because it has the Kindle app. I mean, I feel like that's basically what we're looking at here is basically it's a Samsung product that has a Nook app almost. It's pretty. It's lip service, but not even lip service in a way that seems to me to be super beneficial to Barnes and Noble or the Nook brand in general.
There's a way to look at that. So you can look at it as Barnes & Noble has given up on the hardware and is just,
they
floundering.
Nook out as a separate. It's going to happen next year, but they've spun Nook out as a separate company.
They're working on spinning Nook out.
They have given up.
Well, I don't know. Because what this does is this lets them focus on a core competency. Rather than worrying about hardware and software, now they can work on the Nook store and the Nook as a platform. Right? So Kindle and Nook both essentially run on everything. What this can be a play at is, okay, we're still going to have kind of our own hardware identity. We're still going to do that to make sure that there's a premier Nook experience in the same way that Amazon has its kind of premier Kindle experiences. But their hardware has always been interesting, but has never sold particularly well. So let's write off that part of the business and focus on what actually matters, what is the real moneymaker. Where do you think Amazon makes its real money?
Oh, everyone makes their real money from people actually buying things from them.
Most of these times, these things are sold at such low cost that they're essentially loss leaders. You are hoping to make up your profit in ebooks or
you
in
buy
content.
into this ecosystem. This is my Nook Simple Touch celebrating its 3-year anniversary. See, Trey, I did not lose it.
Yeah, I bought that for you.
This was a gift from Trey.
Yeah, and here's my Kindle. That's now 2. I added batteries to show how often I use it.
But yeah, so this is the Nook Simple Touch that I have. But what I always really liked about it was this nice little design detail on the back.
I mean, their hardware
is easy to hold. Their hardware was fantastic, but the real problem was that they were competing for price with Amazon.
Well,
and Amazon would just drive their price down because they were also selling so much video content and other things through it.
The other thing about it is, fundamentally, Barnes & Noble's is still grounded in a market where they want you to buy a Nook tablet at a Barnes & Noble's. Now, I happen to spend more time in Barnes & Noble's than the average human being because there's one on campus and you have to walk through it to get to Starbucks.
Important things, really.
I got thrown out of it recently for filming, but anyways, that's neither here nor there.
Story of life.
But fundamentally, people just are so used to going to Amazon to buy things. They go to Amazon and buy a Kindle. They go to Amazon to buy toilet paper and books and everything. And so Amazon is rapidly achieving their goal of being the everything store. And so when you're the everything store and you're the store people are going to already for books and things, it just becomes more convenient to buy a Kindle. This had nothing to do with quality of any of it except ecosystem. Because quality of hardware, Nook won every time.
Well, yeah, but we can argue that that's why the iPod won originally. Wasn't it because of quality of hardware?
They had
down the road. They were first ones out there with quality hardware.
They were first ones out there with quality hardware. They were first. And B, they had a commitment to industrial design that none of their competitors have yet to surface. Right?
Well,
like that thing.
Surface, maybe.
No, but I mean in the small mobile handheld space. Okay. No one is putting the Samsung Galaxy S5 in MoMA. Whereas several Apple designs, including the original iPod, I believe, are in the Museum of Modern Art. Okay? So, Apple came in with an entirely different philosophy to doing MP3 players. They were one of the first, if not the first, hard drive based, with the IBM 20 gig micro drives. But the other side of that was so my brother and I both got MP3 players right around the time that the original iPod came out. Ours were competitors, also with hard drives, but they were thicker and really dorky looking, but they could record and they were much more technically capable. My brother gave up on his much better MP3 player and got an iPod within 2 months because it was just a overall better thing. It had a cool factor that none of these other things could have. And the Kindle, like it or lump it, never has had that cool factor. Amazon was first, and Amazon had the ecosystem. So
Right.
I don't see. To me, Nook is the thing, or is doing the much more Apple-like thing of being like funky and weird and cool and well designed and kind of pretty.
Well, and really thinking about like the thing that I really liked about this Nook specifically is that this indentation is actually in the battery. The battery is in this portion of the Nook.
Right.
So that way they were able to make it thin enough and still provide some kind of hand-holding ability. But then the thing is, people put cases on it. And
Right. Well, yeah, people always ruin things with cases.
And then cases happen. And Sydney, hold up your iPhone in the OtterBox.
Don't have it with me.
That would be a perfect
Also,
example.
if I hadn't had the OtterBox on my phone, it would have gotten broken again this week. So.
Well, yes. It serves a purpose.
And
but-
my Kindle had a flaw in the screen within like 3 days of owning it. So
that's
some of
fine.
us need cases.
but
I mean-
not all. So I think that, I don't know, I personally, I hate that Samsung is the one that they're out there with. But I understand the professional decision.
But I mean, who else are you going to go with?
But I still don't see what's the point of putting your name on the product. If what you're saying is what they need to focus on is developing their software, then what I'm seeing is develop your software for all devices rather than connecting yourself to a specific
Well,
device.
they run
It's
their
like the Facebook Home thing, though.
yeah. I mean, they're running their specific software on this Samsung device and also making their software available everywhere. What they've done is they've taken out the ludicrously expensive task of developing, marketing, and stocking hardware. Because that's
Right.
look, software is cheap, hardware is expensive. And so they have taken out all of the hardware R&D, which is
But
billions.
the other thing is that, and it's important to note, is that this is not an exclusivity deal with Samsung. Samsung is just the first one that has made a Nook tablet.
Right. So they make Nook as platform.
Yeah, and it looks like that's kind of what they're going for. They want to just partner, because there are so many cheap Android tablets. So many.
And let's turn this around another way. This thing is much more functional than its Amazon equivalent because it has the real Google Play Store, which the
That's true.
Amazon tablets do not have. So from an objective perspective, if you're looking for an e-reader integrated tablet, this is actually the one to buy, as much as I hate to recommend Samsung products.
I'm going to buy a Nook HD.
Because this literally has the Google Play Store. So this
That's
is
true.
literally a full-fledged Android tablet,
That's true.
which
So all
the
of
Kindle
that
Fire HD, for all of its sales, this thing is the same price, still very deliberately the same price, and is better because it accesses the full Android ecosystem with a very slick and well-proven skin. I mean, that's what this is. The messaging and the tech press, screw it. They don't understand anything that Microsoft backs, which is also this. And they don't.
Right. Well, I really approach this just as a person that has bought into the Nook ecosystem. I am in the Nook ecosystem. I do not want this, but I understand that for future growth of the ecosystem,
But they're not. I mean,
this
you
is
don't.
what they need.
They don't. You don't want it because they're not pitching it right. They haven't.
I don't want it because Samsung, but
Right, but like, let's put that Samsung thing aside and look at what this
if
objectively
it was
is.
HTC,
This is
or
to me.
Microsoft?
This should sell. This won't, but should sell better than the Kindle Fire HD.
It won't. But if you combine the Galaxy Tab 4 sales with this thing's sales, you probably might have a chance.
But
And besides,
this is
this does
better,
have
though.
you walk into the Barnes & Noble store. It's right there.
Right, but no, literally no one is doing that.
I
mean,
know. I've been to my Barnes & Noble recently.
I mean, it's. I mean, I literally grew up in Barnes and Nobles. Like that's what there was to do
Grew up
in
in
suburban
Fords.
North Houston was to go there. We would sit in the sex section and like hang out. Like that's what we did in high school.
Yep.
I mean, literally, that's what we did.
I hate that section.
So, like, I have a deep and abiding love for Barnes and Nobles as a brand. I grew up there in the way that people look at like their neighborhood bar or the.
People grow up in their neighborhood bar.
Everybody knows.
But you know what I mean? Like, it is like this institution of my youth.
Right.
So I've great, the Harry Potter midnight releases, and sitting there with my friends. Like, this is like a thing that I have deep love for. But even I see they're dying, and they're dying
slowly.
slowly.
They can't make the shift to multimedia.
No, they just
They try. They can't.
There's only room for so many brands. there's only so many room for so many brands in that equation, and what they never really established themselves is a true online presence. And so Amazon was the online presence, Barnes & Noble's was the physical presence.
But Barnes & Noble's, of all of the physical bookstores, has the best online presence, which is the only reason why they're really still a big player.
Well, they just have so many damn stores that if you need something right away, you go to Barnes & Noble's.
Well, but they've always had the best online store.
Yeah, I mean, their online store is functional. They've actually leaped into these other platforms, but they never established the mind share of being the online place. Amazon was the online place. And so with all the new media stuff, Amazon and the multimedia stuff, Amazon's the online place. So of course you go to Amazon. Oh, Barnes & Noble's, I don't need a physical book. I want to watch Silicon Valley right now. Well, you can do that on Barnes & Noble's, but that's not where the mind share is.
I go to Amazon.
I go to Amazon. I go to Apple,
Netflix,
actually, generally.
I go to Amazon.
I don't go to Netflix. It never has what I want. Like, just it never does. So and there's no clean way to shift to this topic. So shifting to something infinitely more serious. As most of you probably know, the terrorist army ISIS beheaded journalist James Foley and promptly posted the video of his murder to social media. It was picked up by major news outlets and posted to places like YouTube and Twitter. These sites, in turn, have been pulling down the graphic images and videos from their services, and in some case, banning accounts for posting them. They're not like banning like the New York Times. They're banning like terrorist-related groups that are posting. Or
like if I was to have downloaded the video and then reshared it, then I would have gotten banned.
Right. So that's kind of the facts of it. I mean, Foley had been in captivity for 2 years. He was taken while covering the story in Syria in 2012. And was killed in retribution for the U.S. airstrikes in Iraq, at least according to ISIS.
That's what they said.
That's what they said. In the video, in fact. So there are a complex web of interests here. In one way, leaving the material up could be seen as a way of supporting ISIS by letting their message get out there. This was literally a message killing. They killed Foley to make a statement, and to share that video in a way is to let that statement permeate into the world. Whether you support it or not, you are giving it a greater voice by continuing to post it. Also, the family of James Foley has stated they don't want the material out there for fairly obvious reasons. However, there is something troubling about limiting the freedom of press and freedom of speech on the internet, especially, where we think of the internet as an open medium. And anytime anyone is pulling information down from the internet, that's something for us to take a pause and think about. So Twitter has claimed that their policy is to pull down images of someone's death at the request of the family, which they have received, unless it is considered truly newsworthy. And they take that into consideration how newsworthy that death was. So given all the issues at play, do you think Twitter and YouTube are doing the right thing?
I think they're operating within their own terms of service.
Yes, but that's yours and their own obfuscation.
Yes, of course.
I get that they can do this. They can pull down whenever they want for whatever reason they want. It's their own walled garden.
Right. I think that at some point, Twitter especially, like YouTube, because YouTube has been known in recent years to take things down for music that wasn't licensed or video content that may have not been licensed. Basically,
look, I get stuff pulled down all the time for background music I've legally paid for. Annoys the crap out of me. Every time I post a new version of my documentary, it's like this. Yeah, there's the song. I keep sending you the same email that says I paid for it.
So, I mean, YouTube has been well established that they highly regulate what gets posted and what does not. However, Twitter has really been... Twitter is where things like the Arab Spring were allowed to happen, and really kind of where... And we've even talked about how Twitter is like a news outlet, basically. It is a great place to aggregate what is actually happening.
Sure.
because you can get it in real time and you get all of it.
But you can get that this
You're
happened.
drinking from a fire
Fire
hose.
hose. But you can get that this actually happened without seeing the actual images. Theoretically. I mean, you can get the
Right.
gist of the story, right?
But as my editor-in-chief has been known to tell me, I need to find the original content in order to verify for myself instead of interpreting.
Right, instead of looking through other people's lenses. And that's where this gets tricky for me. Because fundamentally, this is news. Okay? Like, I get that it is. I really do get this is a terrible tragedy. And what happened to him
horrible, and we don't think that
horrible and unfortunate and all of that. But fundamentally, this is news. And decision makers are already taking what happened into account in their decision-making process.
Right.
Our democratically elected leaders are, like Obama released like this really strong statement from his vacation home in Martha's Vineyard saying like that ISIS does not belong in this century, reflecting directly on what they did to James Foley.
Right.
It's like, this is news.
The video is shaping the public policy of the United States. Go ahead, Sydney.
The thing that sticks with me, though, is the fact that the family has expressed a desire for this stuff not to be out there. And for me, that plays a huge part. Like, I understand that it's newsworthy, but again, just because it's affecting policy doesn't mean that the general public needs to be essentially using this as it's death porn is what it is.
It's a snuff film.
Exactly. It's, it's that idea of, oh my gosh, this is gruesome and I can't tear my eyes away. For the general public, it's not like the general public needs to view this.
But I'm sorry, that is not actually how we view information in a republic. The fact that we theoretically should have access to as much information as possible within,
you can have access to
bounds.
the information without seeing the footage. I don't think it's necessary. I really don't.
And I think that the way the footage was delivered in the first place is important in this case. Now, for example, if the footage had been sent to the U.S. government, then that would be one thing. And then like leaked online, that would be one thing. However, because ISIS posted it on the internet in social media setting, they made it public. Technically, this is horrible, and I can't believe I'm going to make this argument. Technically, it's their content. They're the ones that shared it publicly.
Sure.
So we now make a policy of spreading terrorist propaganda
Actually, no, literally,
them?
Actually, literally, you can't do that under U.S. law. It can be seen as basically aiding and abetting. It's one of the things that Twitter's up against. Twitter's up against the possibility that this could basically be considered aiding and abetting the enemies of the United States. Because what you're doing is you're giving them promotion. In a weird way, it's the same reason why most U.S. politicians won't do the Ice Bucket Challenge. Because you're using your public office for self-promotion. It's the same kind of thing where by posting it to these services, which are not governed by the First Amendment, which are not governed by any U.S. amendments, right? That this is not the public square. We think of Twitter and YouTube and all these things as the public square, but fundamentally they're not. You don't have the right to free speech on YouTube. They can pull you down for negative comments and do all the time.
Right, they can do whatever they want.
They can do whatever they want. Now, you can choose whether or not... Well, what can't happen is if I was to post this on our site, that would be protected speech. Now, I'm not going to, but I could. That would be protected speech because I own the site. Or we own the site. We, the three of us, own that site. And so if we were to post it to our site, it is protected speech. Now, Google could block us from search results for doing so, and probably would.
And they're allowed to.
They're allowed to. But we are still allowed to do really dumb things. And we are allowed to do things that are potentially dangerous. Now, there could be consequences for this. And for instance, we might get investigated by the NSA if we're not already. But we don't have protected speech on Twitter and YouTube. And so Twitter and YouTube are also up against this thing where they could be helping the enemies of the United States.
Right, okay,
so
let's spin it out from the actual death of James Foley, because it's horrible. And take it more, I guess, broad. What level of free speech should we expect from these services, and how open should we expect them to be about that? Because
They're going to be as open as is financially viable for them.
so basically they're going to tell you as little as they can, and still
So in
basically
YouTube's case, it's pretty much anything that doesn't. Generally speaking, it's anything that doesn't violate copyright law or obscenity law.
right.
And if you look at YouTube, that's a pretty good standard for what this is, and isn't considered terrorist activity, right? So you
Right.
can't be a terrorist, you can't be a pornographer, and you can't break copyright law. As long as you're within the bounds of those three things, you're probably okay on YouTube. With Twitter, that's skewed much more broadly, right? Again, obscenity law, copyright law, but that's in 140 characters. Like, that's less the thing. But they skew it really, as long as it doesn't anger the U.S. or the Western powers, you're okay.
It's true.
I mean, they've been quite willing to piss off China or piss off the Arab states, or allow Twitter to be a platform for political revolution. But they're going to pull this down because they operate under the protection of the United States, and often the promotion of the United States State Department as a means for growing democracy in places that doesn't have it. So Twitter, I bet you, generally speaking, you can expect a huge amount of openness. But clearly there's a limit. So on that note, it's time for our last call. The short story here is that just as a few months ago we had someone simulate a calculator in Minecraft, now 2 different individuals have simulated hard drives, a 1 kilobyte hard drive and a 4 kilobyte hard drive, based on structures solely functioning within Minecraft, the video game created starting in 2009, where it's basically Legos.
It's blocks.
It's blocks gone crazy. So user Smelly String and user the OJJ created these hard drives by manipulating the fact that the world of Minecraft follows similar natural laws to the real world. Specifically, they use Minecraft redstones, which can be used to power circuits, and then combine them with regular blocks that will allow for the free flow of energy, and glass blocks, which do not allow for the free flow of energy, essentially act as resistors. By combining these into a piston, they create an individual mechanism for storing a 1 on circuit regular block, or a 0 closed circuit glass block. By chaining bunches of these together, they create a storage device, which is pretty damn cool and only slightly pointless.
But awesome.
It's awesome.
So awesome.
They currently don't have a mechanism for loading data into these drives.
Don't care.
They
Still
haven't
awesome.
worked that out yet. They don't
They'll
have
get there.
They don't have basically a Minecraft bus, which somehow links Minecraft with the rest of the world.
A Minecraft series of tubes?
Minecraft,
perhaps?
Yes, we need Minecraft tubes.
But I mean, these are, you can store 1 kilobit information in essentially a Minecraft mechanical hard drive. That's pretty cool.
Crazy.
So eventually the Matrix and we all die, right? So on that note, it's probably time to end. Thank you so much for joining us on this week's Text Last Call. If you have any feedback for us, podcast at textlastcall.com, facebook.com/textlastcall, pinterest.com/textlastcall, or at textlastcall on the Twitters. However you find us, you'll be seeing us on the interwebs.